Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Burnout Podcast. My name is Skip O, and I'd like to talk to you about our sponsor today, Throttle and Thrive. Throttle and Thrive is a 6-bed facility in California. It's a men's substance misuse facility exclusively serving first responders and veterans. Throttle and Thrive can be reached at 805-701-1309. 805-701-1309. When you make that call, Siobhan Thompson will probably be the one answering. She's the CEO there. And then she'll ask you some questions. And then after you decided you want to change your life and you want to live life, she will personally come and pick you up at the airport once you fly out anywhere from the United States. So keep them in mind if you're out there or a family member's out there and they need some help, whether it's for addiction, mental health, or whatever the case may be. Please go to throttleandthrive.com. Check them out for more information. Thank you. Today, we are all the way across the pond. We've got a good friend, Ciaran, is on here. He's got an experience he's going to share with you. Plus, he's going to join us in the walk and in the Pete Lewin Newfoundlands, the swim, Cancer Awareness Swim on the 21st of August. And then on the 24th, through the September 7th, sometime during there, he's going to hopefully join us with a walk too. But Ciaran, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Yes, very well. The sun is shining. What more can you ask for?
Absolutely. I tell you, I remember many days the sun shining, but inside it was a cloudy day in my head.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing, we're here to talk about the realities of mental health and the depths it can drive you to, and also the place in which you can find yourself. And even on the sunniest days, it can still be the darkest. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to actually be here in a weird way. And I thank you for having me on.
Well, I tell you, I really appreciate Pete Lewin over there. Ciaran's from England. Pete Lewin Newfoundlands, my friend of mine, he's a paramedic, connected me and Ciaran together. And I'm just, listening to your story, and I can relate with you. And you got, for a young person, you got a lot of wisdom, man. And unfortunately, it sounds like that wisdom came through some dark times. First of all, could you share for all the people that listen, and we're from America that never been in England, where you're from, some of your past history, and then we'll get into some questions. Does that sound okay to you?
No, sounds good to me. So I'm from a little city called Nottingham. Most of you will be aware that, of course, it's the hometown of Robin of Hood, Robin of Locksley. And yes, we have a castle, we have a sheriff, and I literally live on the border of Sherwood Forest. So as soon as you come out of my estate, there we are, and you're greeted with the signs. So literally, I am Robin Hood. I'm not really. I wish I was. But yes, so no, it's a nice part of the country. It's fairly rural where I am, but also fairly urbanised at the same time. My background as well. So as Skip said, I got to know Skip through Pete Lewin, a dear friend of mine. Pete Lewin Newfoundlands, a charity that I support unconditionally. And I got to know the charity and Pete last year. I'm an ex-police officer myself, ex-serving member of the front line in this country. And it was actually my mother who discovered the charity and what Pete does, the swimming therapy. And in general, she thought that would be a very beneficial activity for me. And then obviously I left the police last year. And with that came a lot of trials and tribulations and turbulence. So I undertook my first swim last August, a year ago, can't believe it. And through my recent tragedy, crisis, whatever we wish to call it, my recent experience, I've found myself gravitating back towards Pete wholeheartedly. And I've undertaken a few swims with him already. And again, as Skip says, on the 21st, we'll be going out there in memory of Paula, Pete's daughter.
Well, Ciaran, that's amazing. When Pete said, I got a guy I want you to meet, and then we got on the phone, you shared, and you answered the call and the text. Because a lot of people, when you're going through crisis, it's embarrassing. People, and talking to a complete stranger about the dark stuff that's going on, that usually means people are willing to do whatever it takes to get better. And I love your willingness to want to get better, your willingness to jump on here and to share. It takes courage we got the courage when we go into a dark alley, when we go to a fire, when we go do CPR on somebody, that stuff I can do. But when I got to share my emotions with somebody, that right there, I don't know how you feel about it. Is it hard for you to do that?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I suppose I've always been a very private man in general, in sort of facing the public. I'm very much like my dad in that regard. He's the most genuine, humblest person you'll ever meet. He's my hero, my dad. Not to take anything away from any of my other family, I adore them all and love them unconditionally, but my dad he's my hero, and he's taught me a lot over the years. I'm nowhere near perfect, but for me, yeah, I suppose I always have been a private man. And through this experience, which I am prepared to discuss with you guys wholeheartedly, I mean, it's like when you're going through therapy. I mean, I currently am. I'm seeing a counsellor over here. That's the thing. You've got to be honest and open, and this is how we get better. This is how we recover, and this is how we help others, by being honest, open, and frank. And if we're not, then unfortunately, we're not giving everything that we could potentially to others, to help others. That's the way I see it.
Man, I tell you what, I like where you're thinking now. A friend of mine, I was on his podcast, Jason Saltel, day before yesterday, and he said, "Man, I am so tired of hearing about stigma." And he said, "Guys, just tell your story, and then you don't have to worry about the stigma of it because you're telling your story just like you're doing, man. You're sharing your story. You're not holding back." And that, I think that's the best way, to get rid of the stigma of it. And because the stigma lays in, it's a word. You're not sitting there and just saying a word. You're doing something about it. You're going to help Pete Lewin Newfoundlands. You're getting on here with somebody you just met not too long ago and sharing your emotions, which I'm blessed to have you on the show, but I'm blessed to call you a new friend because I need all the friends I could get, because if that darkness comes into my life, I need people with a different perspective from a different country that can kind of dial the combination to find my sanity again.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. And I think that's the thing. When you meet people who have been through their own trials and tribulations from completely different perspectives, but you're almost relatable to each other, and there's a common ground. And with yourself, as soon as Pete introduced me to your good self, I felt comfortable, and that there was that common ground. It's not tangible, but it's something that you just feel it, and you get the vibe, you get that connection, I suppose, with somebody. And yeah, honestly, it's a pleasure to call you a friend now. I can't wait to meet you on the 21st. And if I can share this experience and potentially help somebody else, then you know what? Something good has come out of this.
Well, yeah, I think it does. I think, what you're doing and helping Pete. Just to let everybody know, we're doing a walk out of the darkness. Chuck Bray, he's with department in Georgia. He headed the peer support. I'm in Indiana. We're flying across the pond, jump on a plane on Monday, and we get there on the 20th. Pete's going to pick us up in London. And then on the 21st, we do Pete Lewin Newfoundlands. You can go there. He does emotional support swims with first responders, young people, with the Newfoundlands. And it's a thing where they take you out in the middle of the lake and the Newfoundlands come in and like rescue you. And through that process, for me, it's like it was a feeling they're rescuing me from my darkness. And they talk to you not only on the shore, but Pete talks to you, and his volunteers talk to you when you're out there. And through that experience, man, you leave it in the lake, and it is the darkness. It is the fears. It is, you just leave it in the lake, and the dogs, they bring you in, and it's just a weird, you have to experience it to understand it. Has that been your experience with it? What was your first time swimming with them, and how did you feel?
So it was August last year, so August 23. And this was before my current situation obviously evolved. It was mainly due to my, how I was feeling at the time, and also having come out of the police literally weeks prior. So if I may skip, may I give you a short backstory to my police involvement? So I joined Nottinghamshire Police in March 21. I served almost 2.5 years. I policed the city centre of Nottingham, and then in the later stint of my career, I moved up to a little town called Mansfield, which is just down the road from me. And for me, my policing career, it was a job that had always appealed since I was a child. And it was a dream come true when I ascended to that position. So I became a police constable in March 21, and I went operational in August 21. The thing when I was on the job, the problem I struggled with, because I'm neurodiverse, I'm on the spectrum, and I acknowledged that. I told them about that when I joined, talked about my history. I went to go and see the doctor, and he signed me off as fit for service, no problem. When I hit the streets, for me, the issue I really started to struggle with was the paperwork, the administrational side. And as time progressed, I just found it more difficult. I'd open up my computer screen, I'd stare at it, and my mind would just shut down. And it was frustrating for me because I like to think I'm capable. And I joined this job to actually do the work, not just to wear a uniform and drive on blues and, go to grade ones and all those things, as cops will know across the world. But, it was about protecting the public and actually engaging with victims and bringing offenders to justice, all the right reasons. And I was so frustrated because I couldn't do this work. And as time progressed, it got worse. And early last year, I did a dyslexia test, and it came back as borderline. So I don't have the condition, but I have enough of it to prove detrimental, and that was the problem. So combine that with neurodiversity, it's a deadly mix, and that was preventing me from doing the work, the paperwork, signing myself off as fit for independent patrol, as we call it over here, and actually getting myself breaking free of the shackles of my probationary period. And I remember very distinctly, I was sat around the table at the police station. It was what we call a Regulation 13 meeting, what every police constable in this organisation, whether it be Nottinghamshire or across the country, wants to hear. And it was the superintendent. There were people from training school. My sergeant was there, my PDO, professional development officer, and a representative from what we have over here called the Police Federation. She was the only person effectively representing me. And to sit around that table and be told, read your career history about how he's not achieving this, he's not doing this, he's failing at this, he's failing at that, is incredibly demoralising, because practically I loved doing this job. I absolutely adored it. And I proved to myself on several occasions I can do this job. But I just obviously need support in certain areas, and I stressed that. And unfortunately, the chief superintendent was just, as far as I'm concerned, ticking boxes. Superintendent, she was ticking boxes. And looking through all the facts, okay, very black and white. And they were going to dismiss me. So I took the decision to resign, because that wouldn't go against my police record if ever I wanted to join or apply again down the line. So it was very hard. It was a very bitter pill to swallow, and ultimately it just completely stomped on me and flattened me, and that's why I had to reach out ultimately and go and see Pete, and that's what brought me to Pete. And that initial swim is unlike anything I've ever done before, really. It's a unique experience, I would say, not just for frontline personnel, but anyone who is struggling with their mental health, anyone who has been through a crisis or a sudden loss, or who is grieving. It is an incredibly emotive and comforting experience in a way, because, as you've said, Skip, I'm not sure if Chuck's done it as well, but you can relate to this. When you go out on that water, it's calm, it's flat. Even if it's an overcast day, it will be calm. It's almost like a mill pond, and you go out there, you get your wet clothes on and your buoyancies, and you go out onto that lake, and when you see those dogs approaching you, because they only release one dog at a time, so it's a very personal experience. It's not like several dogs coming to you at once or several people. It's one person at a time, and it almost makes you feel like you're the only person in the world for all the right reasons at that point. And the animals, they are just, there's no word that can really describe them. Beautiful is the obvious common common phrase I would use, but they're superheroes. They really are, and they don't know it. They don't realise it, and they swim out to you. And as Pete has said many times, there's no judgment, there's no criticism. They're not trying to condemn you. They're only there to try and help and support you. They want to rescue you and bring you back to shore. They want to rescue you from your troubles, from your demons. And, you know, when they're approaching you, it's incredibly emotive. It really is. And, you know, the dog that I've bonded with is Storm. He's my boy. And I always remember after the first swim, when we were all sort of drying down and having a chat around the van, I was sat with Storm and just giving him a pet, and he was sort of putting my arms around him, and he literally, they're like bears, they're huge, and he got his head and he nestled it into my shoulder, and absolutely 100% genuine, swear to God. It's like he was hugging me, and Pete was there, and I said to Pete, have a look, and he said, you know why he's doing that, don't you? And I said, go on, and his exact words were, he knows you're not right. And that's the best way to sum up this experience. Again, thank you for allowing me to divulge some of my policing history, but the best way to describe this is it's a unique experience, it's a beautiful experience, and these dogs are superheroes. Pete's a superhero. He will never admit it, but he truly is. And the work that he does, not just in his occupation, but in his private life with this charity, it's nothing but commendable, and he deserves the highest accolades he can get. He's a dear friend, and he's an incredible man.
I tell you, Pete's head just got about 3 times bigger now when he's listening to this. But no, you're right. You know, first of all, thank you for sharing your experience being in law enforcement. Just to let you know, I was diagnosed 2 years ago about having dyslexia and attention deficit disorder. I was in special classes when I was in school. They didn't know why back then. I couldn't when I wrote, I couldn't read very well. And then on the fire department, when I was doing paperwork, it took me a long time, 3 times or 4 times longer to do paperwork than anybody else. And that I could go into fires, I could do CPR on people, I could do that. But when I was like, had 3 runs behind and doing paperwork, I'd put it off so much because I dreaded it, because it was so hard to do for me. Not that I was stupid, but it was just very hard. I couldn't articulate what was in my head and put it on computer or paper. And then when I was spelling words, I couldn't spell very well. And then when I spelled them out and did it, I'd go back, somebody look and said, and I'd read it. I go, who wrote this? Because it read like a little kid wrote it. But anyway, I could relate. When you were sharing your story, I could relate to you like that. I go, man, I said, you're a guy that I'd want me going in a fire with me, because I don't, there's paperwork and there's doing the job. I want guys like you to go in and do the job, brother. I'd feel comfortable going with you right now. I don't even have to know your work ethic or what happened. I know your heart. And that's the biggest thing, is your heart. And it's hard when administration, some are ignorant. And that don't mean they're stupid, lack of knowledge or compassion, because they're seeing the boxes need checked. Okay, what's behind what's going on here? Let's try to fix it and work it out. But a lot of people are misunderstanding, or they just see black and white. And that's, but later on, what I found out here in America, they're learning it's better to help somebody and cost effective to help somebody than to get rid of them and then get another person that you got to train all over again and do that. So I think with us coming over there, we want to, first of all, you sharing your story is going to help a lot of people. And there's no doubt in my mind, law enforcement, firefighters, military, but us coming over there is going to, and sharing our story, hopefully we can open the eyes of some people in the leadership roles to say, hey, here's what we do in America. Here's what our leadership is starting to do, is because you can show them it's more cost effective. Plus, at the end of the day, the morale of your department will be a lot better, and people are more up to come when there is a problem, a small problem, and not get it to a big problem. But anyway, man, I applaud you, Ciaran. You're awesome. And talking about Pete, Pete's a good man. I remember when my first swim, we were over there in December. It was 0 Celsius or 32 degrees. We put a dry suit on, and we were in there for about an hour. And even being that cold, you got used to it a little bit. and Walker came and got me. And Walker's the dog that a lot of us donated money. We got Walker, and and we sent him over to Pete to be a part of the team. And he pulled me in, and it's hard to describe, but I had Holly with me. There's Holly, Tracy, Joe, a lot of different people were out there doing it. Vic were doing it. But they talked to you, and she did an awesome job with me. She walked me down there and just did an awesome job with me. Then Pete, we was out there, and I got a video of it when we were there. And I said, we're finally here, mate. We're finally in the lake together. So I can't wait to be in the lake with you and getting and talking and doing with you. But yeah, Pete Lewin Newfoundlands. I would go on Facebook, check him out. He's got a website too. We'll try to link it up on here so everybody can check it out with Pete. But Kerwin, before we close and before we get to end, tell me more about your dad. Tell me some of the things that he taught you growing up and what he does today.
Well, I mean, so first of all, what you said about your experience in the role, I never even knew that. I wasn't aware. So again, 100% relatable on all counts. Just like me, I mean, you're dyslexic, I'm borderline. You've got ADHD, I've got Asperger's. It's one of those, and very, very kindred spirits here. So again, it just enthuses me to meet you on the 21st. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my dad, I mean, my goodness, what can I say about my father? Very much like me, obviously. He's also Asperger as well, although he wasn't diagnosed until much, much later in his life. God, I was 10. I think my dad must have been in his 60s when he was diagnosed, or a lot later. Just like I say, he's the most genuine, honest, humble man you will meet. He's been through his trials and tribulations, crikey. I mean, we've not even touched upon my recent experience, the one that's really sort of brought me to you guys. Again, if you want, I can happily divulge in a few moments, very briefly, but he's been through his fair share of hardships throughout his life, which really sent him to a dark place in his own right at the time. But he found a way through. He's had his troubles with relationships, his first marriage, and so forth. But again, he's pulled through. He's found a way forward. Again, my dad, he's always, when I was younger, we always used to spend a lot of time together. He used to take me to events, things like film, TV conventions, things that I used to love as hobbies. And, we've had a lot of wonderful experiences together like that. But I just think the way he conducts himself, he's never overindulged in anything. He's never smoked. He hardly drinks. He's never taken drugs. He's a very clean living person. He's one of the healthiest people. He eats the best diet. He's I'll be honest, he's 82 this year, my dad. I mean, I'm mid-30s. So he had me at 49. People are usually surprised when I tell them that, but they go, well, yeah, no, but my dad was 49. That's relatively young by today's standards. Men are having children into their 50s. But he's the healthiest guy for his age. He has never overindulged. He's never been in debt. He's never owed anybody anything. And just his life and work ethic, he's always aimed to instill in me a few beliefs, things like live within your means, neither a borrower nor a lender be, all these sort of old cliches which actually stand you in very good stead. And, you only get out of life what you put in, work with pride, perfection your guide, there is sort of sentiments. If something's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. I mean, these are all cliche sayings, but they're very much what.
That's good.
So I think in that regard, just the way he is and the things he's experienced, he's been in his dark places, and just the experiences we've had together and the things that he's taught me, he is probably the most inspirational person that I know. He's my hero. I've got a lot of people I call my idols, the late, great Freddie Mercury, he's my idol. I've got his song lyrics on my arm, but my dad is my hero. And not to take anything away from anybody else, but, your family are your heroes. And, that's what a better testament to my dad, really. So, Pete's a superhero in his own right, and my dad as well.
Karen, that's awesome, man. My father, my mom and dad were in their 40s when they had me. I was the oops baby. But My dad always protected me. He always made sure I was okay. My dad was in World War II, had never talked about the war until a few months before he passed away years later. And I said, Dad, why didn't you share that? That's when we were kids. He goes, boy, that was my burden to bear, not yours. Found out when he died, he had 2 Purple Hearts, the Bronze Star, a lot of different other medals. But I love your dad, the philosophy he's teaching you. I can relate with you in a lot of ways, and having a father that was there for me. But one thing, a lot of people don't have people like that. A lot of people don't have support. They think they don't have support when it's there.
Yeah.
But Ciaran, there's somebody listening to you right now, whether it's a police officer, military, firefighter, first responder, or just a person that listened to this. You got 30 seconds to help them, to tell them to get help. Talk to them. Go.
I would say, well, to sum up my recent experience, so last year was the police, this year was my relationship. My relationship broke down 3 months ago, and it sent me to the darkest, deepest place in which I've ever found myself, to the point where I made plans to take my own life, and I prepared. Fortunately, I was stopped before anything drastic could happen, and I believe when you stood on that precipice looking into the abyss, ironically, as my dad put it, and you realise that is a crossroads, and it's one way or the other, and that way is absolutely not the way you wish to go. Life is for living, and it is a gift. We only get one chance, and again, I've realised this. I'm still in recovery. I am still struggling in my own right. Every single day is a battle. But my God, you've got to live. You have. And as it's cliche, but as the Shawshank Redemption does state, get busy living or get busy dying. And it's so true. That's goddamn right. So, when you come over, I will gladly talk about my situation with you more. I will gladly come on here again and discuss where I'm at 3-4 months' time down the line. But I can guarantee to you, Skip, and to everyone else who's listening, I've been to that precipice, I've been to that dark place, and I never want to venture there again.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing. But there's also, anybody out there listening, we have support meetings on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. The Worldwide Peer Support does. You can go in there 8 p.m. Eastern, and we're 5 hours ahead of England. So you just kind of figure that out. And then if you're in England, you want to contact us at burnoutpodcast.org or burnoutnetwork.org. Send us an email. We can connect you with Ciaran. Also, Ciaran, One other thing I want to ask you. When you're going through those dark times, is there a phrase, a verse, or lyrics of a song that kind of resonates in your mind that gets you through that? Is there something like that pops up?
Yeah. There is, I'll be honest, there is. Probably the deepest one of the lot. One of our nation's greatest heroes. He's controversial in some regards, but of course, he's more renowned for his political and victorious exploits, the late, great Winston Churchill. He once said, he was neurodiverse. He also had Asperger's syndrome. And I believe it was his autism, his neurodiversity that won us this battle. If it hadn't have been for his neurodiversity, the world in which we live would be a lot darker a place, I tell you. But he had a saying, and I'm going to say this to you, I'm going to say this to your listeners now, and this is the one I think that goes through my head more than anything else. Of course, we all know the others. This too shall pass, everything else. All very valid, but this is the one. Winston Churchill once said, if you're going through hell, keep going.
That's good. That's good. That's simple, and that's to the point.
Yeah. So,
Ciaran, I just want to let you know you're more than a conqueror. Thank you for sharing your story, and absolutely, we want you back on here. And also, I want you to be part of the Burnout team. And when we come to England and see you, we'll talk more about it. But thank you again for coming on here.
No, that'll be wonderful. And again, I will give you my blessing here. If any of your viewers or listeners want to contact me, if anyone is going through a similar situation, they're more than welcome. This is how we get through this. We get through it together as a team, and we work together, and we talk, and communication is key. I always say, and this is one of my own sayings, I coined this when I was very young, only anything ever got resolved by talking. It's very true.
That's good. Well, thank you again. And I'd like to remind everybody, too, the Burnout Network. Go to burnoutnetwork.org on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a support meeting there for you. Or if you're struggling, email us. Go on burnoutnetwork.org, scroll down, send us an email, and we'll contact you. If you want to be a guest on this podcast, let us know. So for now, go home tonight, shut your phones off, shut your scanners off, and get some sleep. Thank you.